Thank you everyone for joining today for this session on project planning. I feel like with this topic, there's a lot of different aspects to it. Like, is it the teacher planning side? Is it the student planning side? I was actually talking with Jeff about this yesterday too. So yeah, today I kind of mostly wanted to focus on how to enable students in this aspect, since from the registration that seemed to be what most people were interested in. But I'll also kind of talk about like Flint in different frameworks and how you can leverage Flint throughout the different steps of a whole project process. But of course, I'll start off with the icebreaking news first, and then I'll show you some of those student-driven planning pieces. And then I've asked some people to come share their thoughts as well, so I'll have some time for that at the end as always. Yeah, and also, as always, the recording will be available later, and questions are welcome at any time. Feel free to just interrupt me, throw them in the chat, whatever works best for you. Yeah, for the icebreaking news, I'm not sure if you all saw these, but apparently AI created video social media is something that a lot of the big companies are trying now. So Meta launched this new app called Vibes, where basically people can create short form AI generated videos, and it's kind of like TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, but essentially every video is AI generated. So that's pretty interesting. And OpenAI also just yesterday announced, or not just yesterday, but yesterday this article came out, announced a Sora app. Sora is their video generation tool. They just announced Sora 2, which was really impressive actually. It can generate physics really well and super realistic videos. And alongside that, they announced a Sora app, which essentially allows you to like take a video of your face and then you can create deep fakes essentially and share that with friends. And if other people allow you to, you can create videos of them also. So I think this was, a very interesting, it's an interesting take because I think the big companies are kind of looking at AI generated video as a source of entertainment that they want to bet on. Yeah, and I think even in like a lot of the articles that I was reading about this, people have a lot of concerns and people are also kind of looking at like, oh, this could be like a cool source of creativity and expression. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but just really quickly, I'll also show you this quick video. Yeah, Sora 2 does seem really impressive, where it can like understand physics really well. Like a generated video of like someone pouring water into a glass. Sora could like understand how refraction will like change how things appear through water. So it is a really impressive tool, and the fact that they want to use it for a new social media platform, I think is really interesting. I don't know if anyone here has any thoughts on that they want to share, but yeah, that was something really new that I saw.
I'll just say I wish they had picked a different name, because Sora is the name of our digital book platform. And so all of a sudden the kids are like, if they don't already have the link, they're searching Sora and they're getting this thing, which is super annoying.
Oh, that is unfortunate. I'm sorry. Dang. Yeah. It'll be interesting. We'll see where it goes. I think they're like trying to be like cognizant of the safety concerns that people have. They're like putting in the same safety guidelines as ChatGPT has. But of course, it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, if parents know about it, then they can leverage it. But if they don't know about it, then it's kind of a free for all. So yeah, the landscape's always changing as always. But yeah, that's what I had to share for today. And I'll go ahead and jump into this Flint in frameworks section. So I was kind of looking at popular structures for setting up projects. So specifically project-based learning, and then I think the next one is inquiry, and then the last one is design thinking. And I actually had Flint help me, but kind of looked at what sorts of activities could be created within those processes. So I just like listed them out here. I'm not going to like read everything through with you all, but this might be a good resource to look at when you get the slides. So like if you're looking at like, okay, I want to take a project-based learning approach, these are just some of the activities that you might want to consider as you're building out that experience for your students. And I think some of the common threads here are like, using Flint to help students research, creating like 24/7 support activities to help them with their projects as they're working through it at home, reflection conversations, presentation preparation, sending immediate feedback to students about either their drafts or any of the concepts that they're thinking about. And then also self-assessment can be really good, kind of on the same lines of as the reflection. Flint is really good at asking students a bunch of questions and being super persistent about it and digging deeper. So that from what I've seen, especially for like the younger students who are like still working on like expressing themselves, teachers have really liked that use case. And then some additional ones for the inquiry model. You can have Flint critique students on the questions that they're proposing or the topics that they're proposing. You can help Flint, or you can have Flint help them evaluate sources if you have some like guidelines for how you want students to find sources for their research or for their projects. Yeah, counter argument debates I thought was an interesting one where Flint can take on the role of like an opposing viewpoint, and then you can have the students try and debate them and make sure that their backings for their own arguments are solid. And then yeah, presentation preparation also, because you can have Flint chat with students and like pretend to be an audience member in their presentation and ask them questions. And then for the design thinking process, some of the more specific ones here are like interview simulation. If students are like trying to empathize with users, you can have Flint pretend to be one of those users as a practice round. And then like, of course, like how might we question generation or like other question generation. And yeah, I think some of these are kind of overlapping with the other ones. Oh, but one interesting one is like rapid ideation with Sparky could be cool, where maybe Sparky just acts as like a sounding board, or it could be more so like Sparky is like helping to generate some ideas. However far you want Sparky to help with that process, you can also customize in that way. Yeah, and then I also wanted to share some of the templates that I found in the library that kind of relate to this topic. This one's actually from Jeff, but an impact problem hunter, where basically Sparky is acting as an entrepreneurial coach. I don't know if you want to speak to it a little bit, Jeff. Feel free if you want to.
Sure. Hi. This was probably the first activity I ever made. So if I was to do this again, I would probably change it rather than using this exact one. But yeah, the idea was I'm teaching entrepreneurship and I wanted kids to really think about a problem they cared about, using this for introspection and trying to like divide myself so everyone could kind of have a thoughtful conversation, thinking through what do they care about, what might be something they would want to work on. I actually think the other activity you sort of alluded to that I created was more successful, where I had them do a reflection at the end of the first month of the class. The kids self-generated as a class, they generated a rubric that they would use as a framework to think about their participation. And then I gave that rubric, and they actually made two different versions of that rubric. I gave both versions to Sparky and said, hey, first thing you should do is say, which framework do you want to use? And then it guided them through writing in the Flint, I like to call it Flint docs. I don't know what you guys call that, just the document panel. But like I had them, Sparky basically creates an empty version of the rubric in the format that they've selected of the two, and then it kind of guides them in their thinking. Really, it's just breaking down everything that they would need to do. Instead of giving them a blank page, it's like, hey, the first category from the rubric you selected is your effort. Can you speak to your effort and provide examples from your work in the class? All of that was from the way I created the instructions for Sparky, but I mean, it worked really well. So
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and then like some of the other examples that I found, like a coding copilot that Ned made, which was helping students with like kind of be a project manager and creative director, or the student would be the project manager and creative director while Flint was the one who was like actually helping with some of the process. So kind of like upskilling what students could do in a project. That's like one example. Um, and then this one was like a more so goal identification coach. So more of the like coaching of how students want to set goals for their projects. I've also seen ones like for smart goal setting, but this one was like specifically for like IB, MYP personal projects. So that one was also pretty interesting. And then another like I feel like all of these are kind of all over the place, but the last one here is a Harlow Town research helper. So specifically, they're looking at Harlow, Essex, and basically Flint is the research helper to help them write about this town. And I'm assuming maybe that they live here, and that's why the teacher set this up. But kind of using Flint as a subject matter expert in that way, and of course, like if you're doing this, you can upload more resources for Flint to reference about specific topics so that students can kind of lean on it as a research partner. Yeah, all that to say, yeah, those are like a breadth of the types of activities that you can create for students as they're trying to work through projects, the process. I think there's like so much that could be covered there. I think we could spend hours on it. So I wanted to just give like a quick overview and kind of a starting off point. Since every project is different, you know, of course it will kind of vary what sorts of activities that you can implement into it. But yeah, if there's any like projects that anyone here wants to like talk through with me, feel free to shoot me an email and I'm happy to act as a brainstorming partner there. But yeah, so when it comes to student-driven planning, I think there's like three different aspects here that commonly make sense with Flint. So either, you know, we can do the teacher-made activities, which is kind of what we've covered so far. And I think that's like a majority of how Flint can be valuable to students. It's great for younger students. It's great for tasks that require more specific guidance. And of course, if you can make the activities, that's great. Because, you know, you can like make sure that it's giving feedback in the way that you want it to, make sure that's like guiding students through the correct process. But I do want to also like talk about how either through chats or even student-made activities, I think those offer a lot of new horizons in a way for students to take charge of their own learning and their own project processes, which I think is like a super interesting form of Flint that is still in development. It's something that has like driven our student ambassador program, and like we're like trying to advocate for like more student leadership in AI, but you know, it's still like something that students would require coaching on. So I think kind of telling them like, hey, with chats, these are best for simple queries that don't require as much background. Maybe it's just like you have a one-off question. Maybe you want like Sparky to help you brainstorm on like a singular thing, but it's something that kind of like is siloed. So, you know, good for like quick research, project management. I'll show some examples of this. And then on-demand assistance. And then on the flip side, it might also be interesting to teach students how to make their own activities. I've seen some students kind of like do this on their own, and like some teachers are actually like assigning the assignment as, hey, create an activity for your project or for your peers as something that can help them. So yeah, this is, I think, both a good learning process for how to use AI, how to interact with it, and then also, of course, like how to work through their project in a more streamlined and assisted way. So yeah, I would like tell them like this is best for recurring queries and for when Sparky should reflect a specific persona. So yeah, that's kind of the gist there. So like if you're doing like recurring project check-ins, or if you want Sparky to like be a very specific brainstorming or conversation partner, those would be good there. And then specifically for the chats, let me show you an example here, or a couple examples here. So this first one was, I was pretending to be a student where I have like a senior project coming up soon. So then I asked if it could help me make a timeline so that I can stay on top of the deliverables. And I think this has been like a very good like self-driven example that I've seen from some teachers who are coaching students who like might not have those like time management or like project management skills yet. So yeah, using Sparky to help create that sort of resource for students can be really helpful. Here, let me close that sidebar for a sec. And then I just uploaded like information about the senior project and the rubric. So kind of like the outline of what the project is and the rubric for how the evaluation will be. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a bit about the personas and the student activities. I was wondering if when a student, say, has been doing something within your activity and then it allows them to set up their own activity, will it specialize in a particular area that they want it to be in, or what it thinks the student needs?
Do you mean if they like use the follow-up activity button? I see. Yeah, it should specialize somewhat specifically in the student's area, but I think that's where some of the coaching might be important because it kind of depends on the feedback that students were receiving. Because the follow-up activity basically gives the new activity context on like the strengths, areas of improvement, and like next steps kind of for the student. So sometimes it's a bit more broad, sometimes it's a bit more specific to the student's project. So that might be where you need to like tell students like, hey, try it out, see if it understands the context of what you're trying to do, and if not, you need to add that in.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so then I put in all of this context about the project, and it was actually able to give me a timeline for the whole thing. So it says like early October, do these things, mid-October, late October, and even talked about like what to do on presentation day and key success tips. So that was really cool. And then I could even ask it to like make it printable. So that's when it created this document. And I just asked it to like remove the bullets in front of the checkboxes for a better view of everything. And then, yeah, students can of course like use it for brainstorming as well. Like, I'm not sure what to do for my project. Then Sparky gave some guidelines on like what sorts of things to include in this project because the project was about your high school journey. And so it's kind of guiding me through what questions to start with even that would be good here. So yeah, that's kind of like a quick overview of how to use chats for brainstorming and like self-management purposes. And then for this example also, I put in this 20% project where I think, yeah, I'm not sure if I can click on it and show you all, but essentially students are like working on a passion project of sorts, and they need a topic, and like this is how Flint could act as like a one-off brainstorming session and help them to come up with topics that they might want to discuss. So this one was like for an AP Lang course where students need to select the current social, political, or cultural issue and look at the discourse that was generated from that issue. So here it's like suggesting some ideas, but then of course it's like also saying like, hey, here's what makes a good topic. And then it's asking students more openly like, what interests you most? Do you have a different issue in mind? And yeah, students can like brainstorm back and forth with Sparky. And then and also ask it to help research with some of the like starting points where they should start looking at resources and stuff. Yeah, and then I think one thing to note here is also you can ask Flint to remember things about you. I've mentioned this in like some of the recent sessions that we've had, but if you just ask Flint in a chat, say like in this one, I think I ended up going with uh global, let's see, what was it? Yeah, global climate policies. So then if I said something like, remember that for my 20% project in English, I want to research global environmental policies. Then as the students continue to have more chats with Flint, it will remember that about them. So whenever they come in, they're just like, if they come into a new chat, mention to Flint like, oh, I'm working on my 20% project, then it should remember the context that they're working on global environmental policies. The only thing here is like you'll have to kind of coach them to make sure to tell Sparky what specific pieces of the context of their project that it should remember. And yeah, and then if they want to add like more specifics about their project, they can do that. If they want to just like give it like the overall context and like each chat is going to be a bit more open-ended, that's also an option. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just thinking of alternate methods that exist and also don't exist, and I was thinking of talking about them out loud. I was imagining one scenario. Like I get the reason you were just describing adding details in the chat, but like it seems to me one option is to teach kids to make an activity and say, hey, for this, here's what you should think about for me, just like we would as educators. I know that's a higher mental load for students that are especially younger ones. But I guess I'm wondering, like with all the different places where in Flint as an administrator, I can set my expectations for the school, and then a teacher can set expectations for each group. It seems, sorry to say it like this, obvious that you would add a box where a kid can just say, here's who I am as a learner. Obviously, they would need to change that year to year, but is that in the pipeline at all? I don't remember if we've talked about that option or not, but it seems like a natural way it would fit into the ecosystem.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think what we have right now is memories, which I think would be kind of similar, but I think it definitely makes sense to have some sort of like profile that Sparky is aware of. We already have a profile actually in Flint, but Sparky is just not aware of it. So it might just be a matter of like connecting those two. And I think like,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's sort of like when you're building an activity, there's build with Sparky and there's build manually. This would be the build manually version of building with Sparky. It seems kind of random to be like, well, just randomly tell Sparky in a chat and then hope for the best. I keep telling teachers, like, just because you ask Sparky to do something doesn't mean that Sparky has put it into his script of what he's going to do. You can ask, but you don't know. It just metaphorically makes more sense to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thanks. And Sarah?
I agree that that would be really cool. And one application that I think would be great, especially for the older students, as they are looking at this, at kind of their learning trajectory over the course of a year, for them to kind of be able to put in how they've done in particular assessments and kind of get a picture of themselves as a learner in a more holistic way. So right now our DP students are writing rationales for what they think their predicted grades should be, and they have some data for that, but it could be much more rich if they had some of those learning experiences in their profile. So I don't know, I think it's a super cool idea.
Yeah, makes sense. That's awesome. Yeah, I will share this with the team and we'll see what we can do with it. Yeah, thanks guys. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think, actually to your point, Jeff, I guess I'll skip to this part a bit. The student made activity side of things, I think is really interesting, and something that I wanted to share here is actually something from one of our student ambassadors, if it wants to load. But essentially she shared with me that she had created a whole group of activities with different activities that she's created for her classmates. And so, yeah, Abney from Tejon Christian International School created this like Flint AI for Students group, and she created everything from like English translation helpers to research helpers to like foreign language tutors, and I don't know why it's being so angry at me. But yeah, yeah, like personal statement discovery workshops. So clearly, like students are excited to create their own activities, and I think like some of these would even be like good things to use within projects. So yeah, here's just like an example of students doing this already. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
So I had a question that 401 that's happened to me a couple times, and I was wondering, is it because of the change to a new school year?
Oh, it shouldn't be. I think
Like if it's an old activity from last school year and the person hasn't pulled it over, does that happen, or does it go to the old school year?
old school year activities should still be visible. Usually
Okay.
there's just like a banner at the top that says like this is
Okay.
from
Okay.
the 401 I think is usually just like the internet not working.
Okay.
But if you see it happening like a lot, please let us know at like which link that's happening.
Okay.
We can investigate. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. So I won't walk you all through like the student design side of things, but I will walk you all through like more so teacher-centered design side of things for an activity. So let me go back to this home part. Yeah, of course the chats can also be used by yourselves to plan different product or projects. But on this create activity side of things, I'm just going to create a custom one and show you all an example of a reflection activity that could be interesting for students. And once it loads, I wonder if my internet today is struggling. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put in this topic of how I want Flint to be a reflection guide for fifth graders. And I said they're doing this endangered species project. Every day of the week, I want you to have a 5-minute conversation with them at the end of class, each day reflecting on what they learned and what their next steps are. Oh, and then before it generates the activity, let me add the actual project guidelines. So I created like a 1-week inquiry-based project guidelines where every day it's outlining on this document what the students are doing and what the goals are. And then it has like a rubric at the end as well. And yeah, so I'm going to provide that as context for Flint. And so I think like any sort of like guidelines around the project and context around the project, of course, is important. And here I'm like asking it to be a reflection guide. So basically setting its persona, which often helps with it being able to follow specific rules that you're trying to set, like how helpful you want it to be with students, kind of giving it an idea of what sort of like person Flint is supposed to be helps a lot. And of course, like letting it know what grade level it should be and how I want the interactions to look like. So I'm actually letting it know like, hey, every day they're going to come to you and have a conversation with you. So yeah, so now that it's looked at this document that I added in here, I really wish I could show it to you all. Don't know why it's not working. But yeah, it's looking at the document and it's creating this activity for me. And from here, yeah, it looks like it's created a activity that has a 5-minute duration because I asked it to do that so that it's like really quick reflection at the end of class time. It's like incorporating an inquiry focused approach, which was reflected in the document that I uploaded. And it's also like noting the daily progression. So each day's focus will be different in terms of what the reflection conversation looks like and things like that. So I'm also going to ask it, since I see like on the simulate session piece here that there's not different grade options, I can assume that it hasn't created a grading rubric. So I'm going to ask it to add a rubric giving qualitative feedback on their depth of reflection and whether or not they're on track to do well based on the assignment rubric, which was included in the document. Oh, for some reason it's not letting me send that. Interesting. Okay, let me open up the example that I made yesterday. One more. Great. But yeah, so I asked it to add that grading rubric, and then also one of the final prompts that I added to it was to allow students to speak their responses and ask them one question at a time. Because when I was looking at the simulation, it was like expecting that students would like just put in a pre-written reflection when I had actually wanted it to kind of work through that reflection with the students. And I think other things that you could add on top of this are like, you know, help the students craft like a final reflection statement for the day or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of how this could look. And if I simulate it with the automatic simulation here, you can kind of see how this might play out, where the student kind of describes a little bit of what they experienced that day, and then Flint acts as a like Socratic questioner almost and keeps on asking them for deeper analysis on like what it is that they found out and what they plan to do tomorrow. Yeah, and so that's kind of like a reflection-based activity, but of course there's like a bunch of different kinds of activities that you can create. For anyone on the call who is like kind of new to Flint, this is kind of what the process looks like. On the left-hand side in the activity builder, you can have a conversation with it to craft what the experience should look like for your students. And then on the right-hand side in the session preview, you can simulate a preview or try it out manually, both of which I recommend because the manual version where you can act like one of your students often offers a more like refined view of what that activity will actually behave like. Yeah, so I know I threw a lot of information at you all. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so those are some of the different approaches, I guess, that I would suggest for having Flint act as a project planning partner for students. So either those like teacher-made pieces, of course you can like create ones that help the students with like project management, time management, or even like specific aspects that have to do with the topic at hand. And then with chats and student activities, I think that's where it offers more flexibility with like the specific projects that students are doing. For example, like if you're having a project where each student has a different topic, then it might be really hard to create an activity for that fits all of their projects. So then that might be a case where you might want to coach students on how to create their own activities and kind of guide them in that process. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's all I had for today. And I will now open this up to the floor and kind of go to the share out section. I know I had like asked Kim to share because she had created a project for her sixth graders. Feel free to take it away.
Well, I've created more than just a product for the sixth graders, I think, since I sent you an email. I've been working really closely because I'm working on the design thinking process for schools. And I find a lot of times the kids just don't have any ideas. They want answers to their questions. They don't want to fill out this ask, imagine, plan, create, improve sheet that I gave them. It's just like, I don't know what to do. So I spent a lot of time. I have several different activities I've done. I even had the first graders talk to it and it talked back because they can't read. And that was like having a conversation. It's like, what do you think? And I did one for what's in the story. Also, I have a challenge course that we're working with Maker's Empire, who has a challenge. And I thought, you know what? There's a whole design thinking process to that. So let me work with the what's in the story. And that's what I did with the first graders. The sixth graders and the fourth graders, they had to create the fourth graders had to create a zoo. They learned about animals and enclosures, but they had to come up with, they were designing the animal enclosures and the animal in 3D, but I wanted it something, because I'm a STEM teacher, I wanted something hands-on also. So I had Flint come up with a way to design an old-time diorama. but so it talked to them about the materials that they might need, but it asked them what kind of a materials, and then some of the younger students have no ideas. So I asked them to tell it to make a picture of what it might look like. Instead of just feeding them ideas, if they have no ideas, then oh, I could use this. And then they went to town and built the diorama by themselves. And then the other students I used go through the design thinking to help somebody make an invention that helps somebody. So using a makey or a microbit or something like that. So I changed it based on what I'm working on. And I used a lot of what do they call it? Language. I have to look up the word. What's it called? Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Anti-solution giving techniques. So I wrote a whole big document on it, and then I put in the anti-solution techniques that I wanted them to say, don't give them a solution, but suck the solution out of their own heads and keep doing that until they come up with something that's worth something. So I'm still tweaking it. I'm still working on it. I have like several versions of it. So if I showed you the activity, I have one that I first did. And the only thing that I could say that was a downside of it when the kids got into I want to use a microbit, it started giving them instructions on how to use the microbit, which I thought that was really cool, but it wasn't always right. You know what I mean? So you have to say, okay, well, let's just double check and see if you can actually do this with a microbit, because, AI tends to hallucinate. So I use that as a learning experience also, why you can't trust everything that you see in there. So that's what I've been working on. I have a bunch of documents with personas. You are a design thinking teacher and you want the kids to think about this. And then I just change it for each activity that I'm doing. But I really haven't tried having the kids make their own. So I can't wait to have them try because what I love about it is they come up with their own idea. So they're invested now. It's their idea. They've come up with, it's their problem that they're solving. And it does say, where do you have problems? Like, I don't know where their problems are. Kids don't have any problems. They don't know what a problem is. To them, it's like, I lost my toy. So it says, well, what kind of problems happen in your community? And if they're like, I don't know, they don't give them ideas. I make it so that it doesn't give them ideas. It makes them think about it. Even if that's all we ever do today is think about those ideas, then that's to me the best part, because that's the hardest part for the kids to get started in that brainstorming session and things like that. So that's what I've been doing.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kim. I guess how has the student response to it been like compared to others?
Until they started getting things wrong, it's like, it's wrong. And I'm like, well, good, then let's tweak it. It was much more engaging than this piece of paper that I asked them to fill out. And because they're choosing their own problem to solve, so they get much more invested. Instead of saying, okay, today we're all going to make something for somebody in a wheelchair, or maybe that could be the thing that we're going to do, but they can come up with their own idea. It's like, and then there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how to make a light up sound for somebody who's deaf. And then here's the program for it. That's not what I'm talking. That's just giving them instructions on how to make something. So I want them to come up with their neighbor's problem, their sister's problem, a kid down the street's problem, or something happening in the school, and then go from there and then decide whether or not we can do something with a microbit later. So even if it's just crazy out there, I have to make a car that drives down the road, then, we can prototype that at the end of it, and if that's what they really want. And then they well, what can I prototype it with? It's like, well, what kind of materials can you use? And that, instead of me doing this as a guide on the side, I got 25 me's helping them with that suggestion, talking them through that. Instead of having those little consultation meetings I used to have all the time when I used to do their own passion projects, which I used to call them, and then we'd have to go because they had no ideas or whatever, and me trying to prod that out. I've got 25 of me in the classroom to do that same thing, and there's much more engagement at the end of it. So even if we never actually make the project, it's as if they did, because it went through their whole brain. And someday when they grow up and they go to college, they're going to make that thing. That's
awesome. Wow, nice. Yeah, I love that you're able to allow that flexibility to your students of hey, this is kind of the topic that we're doing today, but if you want to explore something else, the world is your oyster kind of situation. That's awesome. Yeah, and then I had also asked Sarah to share about how she had been using Flint for IB personal projects.
Yes, personal project, and also we just did a new activity for the extended essay guide because it's brand new for the teachers as well. And so we've loaded in all the documents, and the kids are able to chat with it about all different things throughout the process. We put in a FAQ there based on what they always ask. I love this use of, because we'll often ask them for feedback after they've done something, and you know, what are you still confused about, or what do you want to know more about, or whatever. And so I can just take all of those responses from the sheet, put it into Flint, get it summarized, and you know, provide some answers as well, and then that can become part of the activity. So it's worked really well for those kinds of, like when we have a lot of documents that we want them to be able to navigate. So we've done that for personal projects and extended essay. I should mention I'm the librarian at the school, so I'm not like in the classes, but I push in as much as I can. And we've also used this big document idea for our school policies. So you put the whole school handbook in there, and it just makes it a little bit more engaging for teachers to kind of not only be able to ask it questions throughout the year, but like we have a new academic integrity policy, so it's almost like a little activity for them. We've been using it, I think this is starting our 3rd year. And I will say that it's making a huge difference now as I'm working with teachers on longer projects. Those who are embedding Flint into the like whole project at different stages, like literally embedding it into the task sheet with like links for activities. When you get to this point, do this activity. Embedding AI scales, embedding Flint activities, is kind of modeling ways for kids to integrate AI support on their own. Like they're starting to get the idea of, it's not just a more fun way to get the information, it's a faster, more efficient way to get the information, and I need it so that I can do this output later. And so the quality of the student responses that we've seen, because I get to see all the analytics, it's improving as we use it more because the kids are seeing the value. It's not just fun chatting with the thing. They actually feel like, okay, now my teacher is putting me in the hot seat and I know she's going to call on me, and I have to take what I learned from Flint and speak to it. Or, okay, I found these sources. I need to, you know, I'm going to ask Flint what, you know, I think these are good sources, but let me ask Flint what might be some limitations. I'm stuck on that part. So a lot of the things that you mentioned in those earlier slides are working really well as pieces of a larger task. And as an IB World School, there's so much inquiry all the time. It's just a really good fit. The reflection piece, we're using that a lot. Yeah, I would say those are some of the key things that I've seen at our school.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Adam, did you have a question for Sarah?
Yeah, and to the rest of the people as well. Basically, I work at an IB World School as well. I'm the personal project coordinator, and it seems like we've been using it for many of the same things. My school's owned by a company, and they rolled out Flint in most of the schools that are owned by that company. And something that they're looking at is action research to see how much of an impact the Flint's had so far. And I was wondering what ways people have thought of measuring that impact so far of Flint, and how has Flint themselves determined what impact it's had?
Yeah, that's a good question. Anyone here, feel free to add to this, but I do think each school is kind of looking at it pretty differently. From like earlier pilots with Flint and Flint accounts, I do think like a lot of things were very anecdotal. It's really hard to like summarize all of these conversations that like have different topics and like different outcomes and like into a more like quantitative way of looking at things. But I do think that some people are looking at student outcomes and like the actual like projects. I think like Sarah was kind of mentioning like the quality and the depth of projects and specific outputs of different things. Comparing that to previous years has been something that schools have been looking at. I think you can also look at like tests. Uh, there was one teacher who shared with me how um, she used Flint as a like study buddy for students for like I think it was an astronomy test, and then the grades that they got on that year's test were like a lot higher than the previous years. I forget what number she said exactly, but that's like one of the quantitative metrics that I've seen. But yeah, to be honest, I think it's really hard to measure. I'm not sure if anyone else here has some insights there to add.
Well, one measure I think, and it is anecdotal, but maybe we can start to track it, is as we're having them do those reflections, we can kind of gather some of that, because the students are reporting that they are feeling more engaged, more efficient in what they're able to do. So that could be part of it. The teachers love it because they feel like the kids are able to navigate through some of these projects much faster. They get to sources better. They chat about something, like we have this grade 9 unit in INS on marketplace morality. And so they're debating with the thing, and we're telling them, after you finish this debate, you need to provide some higher level vocabulary so you can search for better sources. So it's just all clicking a little bit faster. So teachers are feeling like what they're getting at the end is just a little bit higher level for some, or more appropriate for others. Like that personalization piece is really working. But I think the question of how to actually measure it is a really good one. I mean, we certainly don't have the answer.
Yeah, agreed. I do think actually the speed thing is also one of the things that I've heard about. For some teachers, like projects that used to take a week, they're like saying that they can now do in a day, because you can have Flint act as like a subject matter expert, or like students like conversationally are just like getting things more quickly, and almost like the flipped classroom concept could also apply, where you're having students like learn a lot of the subject specific knowledge beforehand, and then the interactions in class are a lot more about like analysis and conversation there. Yeah, so I agree with you, Sarah. I've also heard like many examples of like from the teacher point of view, they're like really enjoying the new interactions that they get to have with students through Flint, whether it be like more in-depth conversations about projects, or just like, the students come with like knowledge already and they're not like having the same conversation over and over again just to get students up to a baseline. But yeah, I think really good question, Adam. Unfortunately, I just don't know what the answer is right now.
To be honest, I only thought of it today because the first meeting was today, and because everything else has been anecdotal, what I'm seeing around school, adjusting, and I haven't thought as much about. I mean, I thought in terms of process journals and reading those and looking at the chats that the students have been having. But I haven't been doing it in so much of a systematic way, and I was thinking of doing it in a systematic, maybe objective way, compared to basically riffing it as I've been doing it so far.
Yeah. If you guys come up with any ideas for that, our team would love to hear it. I think one of the next things that we're focusing on, don't quote me on this because I think we're still having conversations about this internally, but one of the next things that we want to focus on is how to provide better analytics within Flint. So whether that be like more quantitative ones, or ones that like more thoroughly analyze like students' conversations across the board. yeah, so if there's specific things that would be helpful to you all as you're like looking at evaluating Flint, or even just like figuring out which students to target for like more coaching or like more literacy, that would be really helpful for us as we're developing these things.
That idea of a student profile could help with that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, if we like connect that analysis part to the student profile, then like, Flint is basically like a real person who is learning about the student and their process and their learning journey. Yeah.
If I can add real quick, I can confirm too what Lulu just mentioned. It's something I'm actively working on. I'm Jacob, head of customer success, working with our engineering team on the analytics, not only teacher-facing analytics, but student-facing analytics too. So what are the types of assignments or activities that students are creating, that teachers are creating? Is it more debate focused? Is it role play? Whatever it may be. So we're looking into those aspects, but again, to echo what Lulu said, if there is a data piece that you feel is missing, please let us know, because we want to incorporate that. The other thing that I would highlight too, to Adam's point and a few others as well, is tracking students' information. I just want to call out the reminder too that you have the group analytics that you are able to reference. So you could say, hey, how has my student done from the start of the year to the end of the year? In blank area, maybe it's within reading, writing, whatever it may be. Flint will be able to do an analysis over that year time frame within the group analytics. I will frame that in the mindset that that is only going to be based on the activities that students have done within Flint. However, you could take information from another piece and incorporate that to say, now, in addition to what the students have done, here's additional information about our students, analyze this combined with these other activities. So I do think there's a lot of potential within group analytics. I think there's a way that we can improve that even further. And again, we're trying to just improve analytics in general. So again, as you have insights, thoughts, no idea is a bad idea in this circumstance, because I think we're all trying to learn more of the different capabilities, but also the outcomes. So I think more now we're past the realm of how does AI fit in the classroom. Now it's all right. Now what is the impact that it now has, and how can we prove that? So I think that as we're starting to evolve, that's where we're going, as well as I think a lot of the teachers too. So just want to call.
I was wondering, something that I've been trying out is actually acting as a training tool for teachers. I mean, as Sarah probably knows, there's a lot that goes into being an extended essay supervisor and person project supervisor, understanding the different MYP criteria and how DP subjects are assessed and so on, and adjusting it for the teachers, because actually, strangely enough, the teachers can sometimes be less patient than the kids when they get questions. They're like, I want answers now, rather than having to think about these things. So that's something that I've been trying to work on, because there's only so many sessions, professional development sessions, that I have been given to do with the teachers. So I've had to try to use this instead. And before I did use ChatGPT to help. Now I'm thinking to use Flint instead for that.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect idea. I mean, we've even used Flint to help train people on how to use Flint or understand Flint. You can definitely do that same thing with, whether it be IB or other pieces of professional development. And the nice thing is that you're literally creating an activity and your teachers are then acting as the members or the students. You'd be able to see their real-time responses. Where are their confusion points? What do they need as a follow-up? And it's going to give you that real-time analysis. So I think you would be a great asynchronous training to help in preparation for the PD that you would then have to do, or need to do, or give insights of, okay, here's where I thought they needed help, and actually we need to back it up or fast track it. So I do think that that's a great use of it, not only just for students, but for your fellow teachers.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you all. I feel like I came into this call with like almost too many ideas, and I was afraid that it would be overwhelming, but I really love this conversation that we're having. I think it's been really helpful for me, at least, and hopefully also for you all. But yeah, I do want to be cognizant of the time, so I'll just go ahead and do the wrap up. But definitely want to continue these conversations into the future. And so if you all have any like specific ideas that you want to throw at us, or feature requests, or even if you just want to send me an email complaining about something, please do. Yeah, but for this wrap up, so next week I'm going to try and do a math session. This is like kind of the loose plan for the rest of this year. I would just note that like the dates on here are not exactly accurate. I'm planning them out one by one. I'll try and like do them more in advance, but it's just been like kind of hectic recently. But yeah, so this is kind of the structure here. If there's any like additional topics that you want to see, let me know. Also, if there's like any of these topics that you like want to speak at, or like if there's like specific things from these topics that you want me to cover, also please let me know. Yeah, these sessions are for you guys, and so definitely want to get as much feedback from you all as possible for them. And then, yeah, all recordings will be posted on our website. Everyone here and everyone who registered, of course, will get the direct link as always in your email once it's available. And yeah, here are the final QR codes as always. Probably all of you are already subscribed to the Campfire calendar, but we do have a new Instagram that we've been putting more like teacher-facing information on, because a lot of our social media is mostly geared towards like administrators or school leaders. But yeah, the Instagram is where we're going to like put like a lot of teaching tips, usage tips for Flint. So that might be something good to join, or maybe even share with your teachers. And then the Flint community, as we've always had, has been a space for people to share ideas, kind of like these sessions, but more asynchronous. So yeah, that's also a great place to join if you have not yet. Okay, yeah, that's all I had. But I do have some additional time if anyone has like further questions or ideas that they want to share. But yeah, otherwise, thank you all for joining, and hope you all have good days, good evening,